A group of volunteers finds themselves trapped in a deadly psychological game, forced to face manipulation, fear, and relentless pressure from unseen watchers. In 1975, the Rockefeller Commission was assigned to investigate the CIA's secret mind control programs. These programs, known as MKUltra, aimed to develop methods for manipulating human consciousness, either to recruit agents or to extract information during interrogations. Researchers used psychoactive chemicals, sound-based effects, and other forms of psychological influence. Before the investigation even began, most of the documents were destroyed, leaving one disturbing question unanswered. Are these experiments still happening today? Present day. Miss Emily Riley is a professional psychologist and psychoanalyst. As one of the youngest specialists in her field, she's making remarkable progress and quickly rises into a leadership role. Because of this, Emily is brought into a new, highly classified project overseen by Dr. Phillips. Her assignment is to review video footage of human experiments and evaluate the effectiveness of the techniques being used. She must also determine the real purpose behind the psychological conditioning, and identify the reasons these particular people ended up there. From the first clips, it becomes clear that the testing ground is a sealed room behind bulletproof glass. Some time ago, 4 volunteers were gathered inside it to participate in what they believed was a routine psychological study. 4 people, Carrie, Tony, Crawford, and Paul, signed up hoping to make a bit of money for what sounded like an easy task. Their goal was simply to answer a series of logical, and sometimes absurd, questions so the observers could collect data. Carrie is confused and visibly nervous, taking everything far too seriously. Tony is more easygoing and upbeat, though he's unsettled by the sterile white room and the fact that all the metal tables and chairs are bolted to the floor. Crawford, an older man, seems to understand the assignment better than anyone else. He's calm, composed, and answers each question quickly, helping the others along. Paul is quiet and anxious, a first-timer in any kind of psychological study. As Emily carefully analyzes the footage, she immediately identifies the roles each person falls into, both socially and within the confined space. Crawford is the dominant personality, staying in control of the group. He's steady, thoughtful, and capable of making harder decisions than the others. Dr. Phillips, however, reacts skeptically. This isn't the kind of conclusion he expected. His project runs deeper and is far more complicated than Emily realizes, and he doubts she's ready to become part of the system. Given more time to analyze, she keeps reviewing the surveillance tapes. The room is locked from the outside, which unnerves the volunteers. Crawford suggests they ignore it, explaining that these studies can last a few hours or nearly an entire day. Usually the pay is around $100, which, for them, is significant enough to justify the time. Calling his wife, Tony says he'll be home late and tells her not to worry. As the experiment drags on, the volunteers start discussing boundaries. Most of them are willing to tolerate just about anything, as long as they're not forced to take any illegal substances. Soon, Dr. Phillips himself enters the room and announces that the questionnaire they filled out was nothing more than a formality. This is a real experiment, one where they'll be tested through 4 stages. As the trial goes on, participants will be eliminated one by one, but that won't affect their reward. Each of them will receive $250. Before moving on to the first phase, Dr. Phillips asks the 4 volunteers to hand over their phones and personal belongings for temporary storage. He assures them that once the study is over, everything, including the promised payment, will be returned. The measure, he says, is only to maintain the purity of the experiment. Once the preparation is complete, Dr. Phillips announces the start of the experiment and shoots Carrie in the head before immediately leaving the room. The men are thrown into shock and panic, forced to stand in a confined space with a corpse. Tony tries to stay skeptical, insisting the whole thing must be a twisted prank designed to capture their reactions. He suggests the murder is staged and that the footage will probably end up on YouTube for millions of views and comments mocking how scared they got. Crawford, however, checks Carrie's body and forces Tony to see the truth for himself, that it's not a joke, she really is dead, and she's lying in a pool of blood. His nervous laughter and false confidence collapse instantly into terror. The men now understand that everything happening around them is horrifyingly real. A minute ago, right in front of their eyes, someone was executed without any regard for American law, or for the fact that Carrie had friends, a husband, and children. She was killed mercilessly, with no fear of consequences, which means whoever is behind this is powerful and untouchable. Emily reacts with shock as well, but Dr. Phillips tells her not to worry. All 4 volunteers are officially listed as missing, and no one will be looking for them, just like the thousands of other citizens who simply never made it home one day. The mission is too important to worry about human lives, and Emily is running out of time to figure out what's really going on. Realizing this is a covert government operation comparable to the old CIA experiments, she continues reviewing the footage. Gradually, the panic in the room begins to fade, and the men try to make sense of the situation. Tony and Crawford want to believe they won't be killed, but everything happening keeps chipping away at that hope. The recruitment was done openly, which makes such brutality seem impossible, but being moved to an unknown location means no one will ever come looking for them. Terrified, Paul stays apart from the others and avoids talking. Eventually, a tone sounds, and through a slot in the door, someone tosses the same pistol Dr. Phillips used to kill Carrie. Paul grabs it first and points it at Tony, convinced he's secretly working with the people running the experiment. Seeing how frightened, and how trigger-happy, the young man might be, Crawford steps in to calm him down. He tells him to check the magazine and the chamber to confirm there's only one bullet in the gun. That makes Paul's plan pointless. He could shoot one of them, but the other would immediately overpower him. The smarter move is to lower the weapon, calm down, and keep talking so they can work together and find a way to survive. Sometime later, a sheet of paper with a new task is slipped into the room. The volunteers must answer the question, what number between 1 and 33 is chosen most often? Whoever gives the least popular answer will be executed. Refusing to participate means everyone dies. They have only 2 hours to make a decision and submit an answer. Their first reaction is anger, pure refusal to accept the reality in front of them. They know that one wrong answer means death, but none of them wants to keep participating in a deranged experiment where human lives are on the line. Watching this, Emily makes her first observations. The written task contains spelling and grammar mistakes, likely planted so the volunteers would think they're being held by non-Americans. As the nightmare continues, Crawford and Tony begin hearing sounds coming from the lower floor through the ventilation and drainage systems. They realize it's people talking, but the speakers clearly aren't American. Tony immediately assumes they're Muslims, possibly terrorists like the ones who film executions and demand ransoms. Crawford thinks the accusation is baseless, but Tony insists these are people of a different religion who don't value human life, and that killing is entertainment to them, something they broadcast to scare Americans. At that moment, Paul notices something even more disturbing. On the spotless white wall, faint marks and scratches appear, like someone tried to claw their way out before dying. Looking closer, Tony realizes the scratches form letters and words. Using Carrie's blood, he smears the surface so the writing becomes clearer. It turns out the walls hold the names of those who died here, along with repeated mentions of prayers spoken by whoever is watching them. This discovery only reinforces Tony's fears. He's convinced they're being held by Muslims killing Americans for entertainment and psychological terror. In a private conversation with Emily, Dr. Phillips admits the scratches on the wall are part of the experiment. They were deliberately preserved, since the team had noticed they accelerated the psychological effects and helped push the study toward its intended outcome. Emily's task remains the same, to understand what the experiment really is and what its ultimate goal might be. Meanwhile, the 3 remaining volunteers realize time is running fast and they need to figure out the best possible answer. Tony and Crawford debate different options, while Paul, panicking, tries to smash the countdown timer. He has no grasp of statistics and has no idea how to approach the problem. At one point, Paul decides to fire at the bulletproof glass behind which the observers sit, but Tony stops him. The glass won't break, and the ricochet could kill any one of them. The gun slips from Paul's hands, but Crawford doesn't rush to grab it. Instead, he asks Tony to pick it up and tells him to pull the trigger the moment the small hatch in the door opens again. Tony would gladly shoot whoever is on the other side, but the hallway is empty. The latch opens automatically. Thinking, naively, that the observers can't hear them, Tony and Crawford whisper a new plan under the table, then put it into action. Tony stays calm, pretending nothing is happening, then suddenly sprints toward the door the moment he hears a noise in the hallway. It's a trap. A mechanism snaps shut, catching his arm in the narrow opening. Paul and Crawford rush to help free him, but Tony is badly injured, and the gun is lost. Watching the torment and suffering around her, Emily decides to step out to the bathroom. She feels nauseous, tears streaming down her face, but she can't hold them back. Yet, this isn't just a psychological experiment for the participants, it's one for her as well. She has to accept what's happening if she wants the position and a place in the system. Having sustained an injury, Tony is convinced he's next to be executed, but Crawford insists otherwise, considering him the most active player in the experiment. As the countdown nears 0, the 3 gather again to discuss a plan. They don't know the correct answer, but decide to try to outsmart the system by agreeing on one response. If it works, there will be no loser and no one will die, though there's always the risk that all 3 could be killed. Fueled by fear, Paul changes his mind at the last second, giving 17 instead of 7 like Tony and Crawford. The volunteers agree that the survivor will inform their loved ones about what happened, but Paul's final move changes everything. Hatred simmers between them, yet they don't have time to fight before sedative gas fills the room. Soon, the project staff enter and take all 3 in an unknown direction. In that moment, Emily learns the truth. These recordings aren't from the past, they happened literally an hour before she arrived. The 3 surviving volunteers had been under the influence of sleeping agents for 3 hours, and now she's ready to observe in real time. Crawford, Tony, and Paul are returned to the room and placed in the corners, after which Dr. Phillips and Emily enter. They examine the subjects so the psychologist can better understand what's happening. Then the assistants execute one of the 3 volunteers. Back in the observation room, Emily orders the experiment to continue. Crawford and Paul wake up to loud music, realizing Tony has been executed. At the same time, Paul notices blood was drawn for testing and has no idea how long they'd been unconscious. Enraged at the guy who changed his answer at the last minute, Crawford attacks him and beats him brutally. At that moment, a gun is thrown into the room so he can execute the traitor. Recognizing that the researchers want this, Crawford lets Paul live, understanding his desperate will to survive. A few minutes later, another sheet of paper is thrown into the room with a puzzle. Where does the United States rank in the world by average IQ? The rules have changed. This time, giving the same answer is forbidden. Both would be executed. Whoever's answer is furthest from the truth will be killed. Clever and cunning, Crawford tears off a piece of the sheet and hides it in his pocket. It contains a hint. The U.S. isn't in the top 10, allowing him to mislead the second volunteer and set a false trail. When Crawford and Paul calm down to discuss the situation, they hear noises again, this time from the room above. It's Muslims praying, which only reinforces their fear that these are terrorists from another continent, sent to intimidate and kill. The foreign language acts as a trigger, driving Paul and Crawford to the brink of madness. What's happening terrifies them, makes them doubt themselves and each other, and pushes them to search for freedom at any cost. Pulling themselves together, Crawford and Paul hide under the table to figure out their next move. Paul seems ready to give up, but Crawford urges him not to bow to the system and to stay ready to run. He's convinced the researchers won't let them leave alive, but someone has to escape and tell the world the truth about the horrors happening in this room. Inspired by Crawford's determination, Emily secretly steals a keycard, hoping she can find a way to help the prisoners and give them a chance to break out. Sometime later, Paul finally gives up and curls into a corner, waiting for the countdown to end. Crawford isn't a weakling and refuses to die, so he keeps searching for a way out. Realizing there's a ventilation grate right above the table, he starts jumping to break it open and climb inside. The scientist watches failed attempts with interest, but eventually, his persistence pays off. Seeing this spark of hope, Paul decides to help him get up into the vent. At that exact moment, two observers enter the room. Terrified, Paul only makes things worse. He scrambles up Crawford's body, trying to climb into the vent himself. It's hopeless. He falls, while Crawford manages to slip into the shaft. Acting out of sheer desperation, Paul charges at the observers, but they hit him with an electric shock, forcing him to surrender. Meanwhile, Crawford crawls through the ventilation system in search of an exit. He nearly reaches the roof and spots what looks like freedom, but it's all part of the trap. They were expecting him. The moment he gets close, they release paralyzing gas, followed by a sedative. A rapid response team pulls Crawford out of the vents and dumps him back in the white execution room. Sick of watching these inhumane experiments, Emily decides she has to help the subjects. She steps into the hallway at the right moment and opens the door so Paul and Crawford can escape. They find a corridor leading toward freedom, but a heartbeat later, it's clear the scene exists only in her imagination. She never acted. Terrified of the consequences, Emily returns the keycard to Dr. Phillips. Viewing her as an unfit candidate for the project, Dr. Phillips orders her execution. It's not just her fear or her unwillingness to sacrifice people for a greater cause, she simply couldn't grasp the purpose of the experiment. Only at the threshold between life and death does Emily understand the truth. The goal of the secret program is to replicate apoptosis, program cell death, on a societal scale. In biology, apoptosis is when a weaker cell sacrifices itself for the health of the whole organism. The US government wants the same outcome with civilians, to turn people into weapons, like suicide terrorists, who no longer value their own lives and don't fear death. In theory, such citizen soldiers would eliminate external threats and act solely in the interests of the state. After giving the correct answer, Emily earns the right to stay in the group. She watches as Crawford and Paul finally come to their senses, realizing time is almost up. While they're arguing over the right answer, Crawford uses the hint he was given. He knows the US isn't in the top 10, but he lies to Paul, suggesting they write down either 4 or 5. Both numbers are way off, which leads to Paul being executed and gives Crawford a chance to survive, or escape. To make that possible, he suggests smearing themselves with Tony's blood so they'll be too slippery to hold onto. Paul refuses. Terror and rising panic freeze him in place. When the time runs out, Paul decides not to answer at all. Convinced he's doomed, he tries to take his own life, but doesn't manage to pull the trigger. The observers burst into the room and execute Crawford instead. He was too strong, too defiant, and refused to obey the system. Paul, on the other hand, proved he was willing to die to save others and sacrifice himself. He's the perfect candidate for a suicide operative, and he passed phase 1 flawlessly. The boy is nearly losing his mind, unable to understand why he was the one allowed to live. Still unaware of the experiment's true purpose, he tries to escape, driven by the memory of those who died in that white room. He wants to tell the world the truth, but every door is locked. Emily could have saved him, but instead she blocks the door, becoming part of the ruthless government machine. His escape attempt fails. They were guiding him down a set path the whole time, like a rat being herded into a corner. In the end, Paul ends up in a room with 2 men tied to chairs. This is phase 2, conditioning. The goal, create a suicide operative willing to die for the sake of the homeland. If someone is made to believe their sacrifice is for the good of their country, does that make them a hero, or just an even easier target for manipulation? Is calling for patriotism at the cost of human lives a noble act, or nothing more than legalized genocide? Drop your thoughts in the comments down below, smash that like button, and don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next video.